You're watching Moms Matter at EverTalk TV, and we have the incredible Denai Marari joining us today. She is a relationship expert, and her Instagram handle is the Black Marriage Movement. It's amazing. You need to follow her. And she's finishing up her master's right now at Pepperdine, becoming a marriage and family therapist. Today, we're going to talk about improving our relationships and talking about race with our families. So thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Sharon.
So as a marriage and family therapist, how do we talk about race with our families?
That's a really good question. I think, honestly, speaking about race with families, you should talk about it in the same ways that you talk about it with coworkers, in the same way you talk about it with friends, the same way you talk about it with associates and acquaintances. I think race is something that clearly is in the news right now. And so I think, you can take kind of your cue from that. And I think one of the biggest things that is important when you're talking about race is just to not ignore what's going on. I think what's happening a lot is that there's a lot of silence, and the silence for people of color, for people who are affected by racism, particularly systematic racism, who are affected by the hurt and by the pain, the silence from non people of color, or from white people, from our white peers and our white fellow citizens, can feel like a lack of care. It can feel like we're alone. It can feel like you all are feeling like you're not affected. And so if you're not affected, then you don't want to get involved. And I'm not even saying it's necessarily that that's accurate, but I'm saying that's how it can come off. And, coming from sort of a therapist's sensitivities and sensibilities, and we're talking about interrelational dynamics, when we don't know something, oftentimes we can tell ourselves a story that isn't necessarily the best story. I think we kind of go negative first. And like I said, that happens with relational dynamics and families as well. If your husband and you if you're dealing with something and your husband never bothers to ask you what's wrong with you, or how are you feeling, or maybe how is this affecting, how is this affecting you, you can think that he doesn't care. And it's not necessarily that he doesn't. But if he remains silent, it's just easier for misunderstandings to happen and resentments to build, etc. So the first thing I would say about speaking to your family about race is actually speak to your family about race. You know what I mean? The second thing I would say, I'm sorry, I thought you were interrupting me. I was going to let you pull in because I know I keep going. Feel free to interrupt me, by the way, at any point.
No, you're going.
I think the second thing that I would say about race is history is really, really important. So it's like, first of all, we're dealing with current events. Secondly, we're dealing with history. And the reason why I say that understanding where the two of those things intersect is important is because on one hand, you have a nation that is really upset about what happened to George Floyd, 6 days ago. And if you are a non-Black person, it could be very easy for you to think, why is everybody so angry? This is one murder. This is one person. This is one incident. I don't understand what the big deal is. Which, by the way, that's a great question. That's actually, there's nothing wrong with coming from a place of not knowing. Ignorance is not, it's not a negative. I think it's a great question to ask. It's a great question to ask a Black person. But when you ask a Black person that question, come from a place of really wanting to learn, come from a place of humility. Do not come from a place of arrogance or pride or assuming that you already know what the answer is. And don't assume that people are this upset over one thing. It's not one thing. There's a pile up here of multiple things. And so if you really want to learn about how to, address this, then you have to be really, really willing to listen. And I wish I could say that everybody is willing to listen. I've still encountered a few people who were not willing to listen. I will say the vast majorities of people, I think, are now starting to listen, are now starting to open their ears, open their hearts, and really go, okay, wait, there's no way that all of this has happened. And it's some little thing. Like, maybe this is something we need to start paying attention to. I'll stop.
No, you're 100% right. And I think the people who are tuning in and listening right now really do want to support the Black community. And
I agree.
We want to know what we should be doing. So what can we be doing to support the Black community right now?
So I think, again, understanding the conversation, understanding context, understanding why we are angry, why we are afraid, why we are upset, why we are hurt. I talk a lot in relationship counseling about anger and how anger is totally valid. It's a very valid emotion. It's a very healthy emotion. There's nothing wrong with anger in and of itself. I happen to be a Christian. In scripture, it says, in your anger, do not sin. So you can be angry, you can feel angry, that's totally fine, and no one can take that away from you as long as you deal with it in a healthy manner, right? So it's what you do with your anger that's important. So I think we have to have conversations where we're allowed to be angry. Oh my God, and as I say that, I'm sorry, my brain is splintering as I'm talking and I'm getting all these different ideas. And what I just heard with the anger, for instance, is there's this stereotype that Black women are just angry. When you stereotype Black women and you say that we are angry, what you do is you allow yourself to manipulate us by being able to do something that would make anybody angry and that anyone would have a right to be angry about. But now you've clipped my wings. Now I have no right to express myself. Now, if I present an appropriate response to something that would make anybody angry, I'm now going to be isolated. I'm going to be labeled. I'm going to be called difficult. I'm going to have people yelling and screaming at me. I'm going to have some sort of a consequence as a direct result. And so, again, understanding racism is understanding stereotypes. It's understanding that I have a completely different experience as I walk through the world than the one that you have, and being really, really willing to hear that. Not to be defensive, not to say, well, I wasn't alive when slavery happened, or not to get into reparations, not to go 20 feet ahead into issues I'm not even talking about. You know what I mean?
Right.
What I found difficult about two conversations I had with two white Christian males in the last 24 hours was whatever I tried to communicate about my experience, a label was given. So could I walk you through a little bit of this? Would that be okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Pastor Judah Smith he runs Church Home, which used to be, I forget what it was called, but now it's Church Home. And they were out of the Regent Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Now they're at the Wilshire Theater on Wilshire in Beverly Hills. I go there for my Bible studies on Wednesday nights. It is a young, hipster, largely white but mixed congregation, and I go to a completely different church on Sundays, which is literally the opposite of that. It's Pastor Teray's church, which is One Church LA, and it's largely Black but mixed as well, and young hipsters as well, right? So I go to two different churches, and I have two different experiences. Pastor Judah has always been in the 5 years I've been there, vocal about whenever one of these instances has happened. He's spoken out about it. He's talked about to the white church, what is our responsibility as a white church to acknowledge our brothers and sisters? How would God feel about this? If you can watch this happen and you're not uncomfortable, something's wrong, and I don't condone that. And I think we need to search our hearts. And for that, I love him. So he posted recently that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. And he was saying it because he was saying the urgency of what's going on right now is that Black lives are clearly not mattering. So we need to address that. And these are my words now. To say all lives matter erases me. It erases me. And I'll tell you why. And this is so important. When we talk about America as a concept, we're talking about, a country that was founded by the founding fathers, none of which are Black, most of which owned slaves. We talk about a constitution that protected the rights of whites, that also called me a slave, also called me 3/5 of a human being. I was not a human being. And so if you can understand that that is what this country is founded upon, and that if I speak up about it, I am not being hateful, I am not being racist. What I am doing is telling you the reality of my experience, and then more than likely connecting that foundation to what my everyday experience is and telling you how it affects me. I'm saying your America isn't my America. So when you're celebrating certain things and you're going, let's go back to the founding fathers, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to go there.
Right.
Do you understand what was going on then? And literally, do you understand what was going on then specifically with regards to me?
It's a huge problem because the education system is so flawed that when our kids go to school, they learn about history, white history. They do not learn about Black history. And this essentially needs to be changed. And I really hope and pray that at the end of this, we do have some major changes, because what I'm hearing you saying is that people do not empathize with the Black community because they don't understand it, because they've never been taught properly, because we know white history and we just don't know Black history. We don't.
Agreed.
We've never been taught.
Agreed. And you know what's so interesting about that? Even that. One of the things that I know, I went to an HBCU, I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C. I was in white schools my whole life, and then I was in magnet programs a lot of times, even in the white schools. So my experience was isolation, even from other Black kids in the schools that I was in. The education that I received from K to 12 was completely different from the education that I received at Howard University. The history lessons I got, the lessons on media, the lessons on culture, the lessons on money, the lessons on wealth building, the lessons on redlining, everything had something to do with me and showed me where I fit into the picture. And I can tell you that that education changed me completely versus the education from K to 12. It was an education. It was a great education. It got me where I am, but I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't in it. And I want to say, I know a lot of kids who, from K to 12, a lot of Black kids who got kicked out of school, kicked out of class for asking about things that pertain to them, where history was concerned, where modern events were concerned, where slavery was concerned. Kids who knew the history, who had studied at home with their friends, or excuse me, with their parents, and who, when they would bring it up in class, they were called troublemakers. They were kicked out. So I think we need to understand, again, I just keep reiterating, there's a completely different experience for white Americans versus Black Americans. And if white people do not start becoming curious instead of deflecting and defending and gaslighting, we can talk a bit about that, and doing anything other than becoming interested and curious and wanting to know more and wanting to be genuinely interested in the person in front of them who is talking to them about this, it's just not going to go well. And I will say, I am seeing change right now. I am seeing change, and I'm super grateful about that.
And let's hope that change continues when it's not trendy anymore. But you just mentioned gaslighting. What is gaslighting?
Right. So, you know what? I pulled up, I actually have a full-on dictionary definition of the word gaslighting. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what it has to do with the conversation that we're having right now. So, gaslighting. Where did I get it? Give me just a second. To manipulate someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. I'll say that again. Gaslighting is to manipulate someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. So what does gaslighting look like? It can look like You come home, you're talking to a white friend, you tell them about your day, you say that you were at Nordstrom, you were buying an expensive something, and the clerk, uh, either disrespected you or suspected you of stealing or suspected you of lying or suspected you of whatever it is. And you can feel the tone of disrespect. You can feel the distrust. You can feel that she feels like you don't belong there. You can feel that she resents your presence. You can feel that she suspects you of anything criminal, rather than having an assumption of innocence about me through walking through the door based on my color, or even assuming that I have the money to pay for whatever I'm going to buy. There's a negative assumption of I don't have the money, I don't have the clout, I can't afford it, I'm trying to steal, I'm gonna return it, etc. You come home, you tell a white friend, a coworker, a relative, whatever, about your day. And gaslighting would look something like, well, did that really happen? Well, is there any way you could have misunderstood? Well, maybe you're being a little too sensitive. Well, maybe you got it wrong. Maybe, you know what I mean? Or maybe you're being racist. Maybe you're playing the race card. Maybe you see race everywhere you go, but it's really not that serious. That is gaslighting. It is to undermine someone else's experience of what they know that they know that they know, that they are feeling, that they are experiencing, and to erase them, in essence, to dismiss them, to minimize their experience. And I can't tell you how depressing it is, how overwhelming it is, how exhausting it is, literally. But Black people go through this every day.
And what happens at home when your partner, your family members have differing views than you do, right? Everyone's well-intentioned, everyone's trying to learn, everyone wants to make change, but quintessentially different views. How do you handle that as a marriage and family therapist?
That's so good. It's so funny. I have a bunch of friends and Christians around me as well. And being surrounded by people with similar values who hold you on, who hold your feet to the fire and who encourage you to come up. Because I've been exhausted, and I've had a couple conversations by some really good friends who have challenged me in this area as of late, in the midst of my exhaustion. And in speaking with one of them recently, he said, he had a similar conversation to the two white Christian men that I had, which was frustrating. And he said, Danai, you have to be open. You have to be loving. You have to be patient. Even though you're exhausted, you really do have to be patient. And what's really important that convicted me is you need to understand that oftentimes the other person has a completely different conviction than you, a completely different perspective than you, and they believe it. Whether it's right or wrong, whether it's your experience or not, they genuinely believe that. And what you have to admit is that you have your own preconceived notions as well that you genuinely believe. If you can see it that way, then both of you can humble out and in your humility, reach for connection. Understand you're both Americans. You're both trying to make your way through this world, and you're both doing the best that you possibly can, but you also both have two different experiences, and your job in the conversation is to try to understand each other. It's not to tear each other apart. It's not to rip each other apart. It's not to accuse, etc. It is for you to understand each other, and it is for you to also speak your truth in love.
Right. And to listen. I feel like we're all lashing out at each other to try and get our views a point, right? So that we're not really listening. And what I'm hearing from you is that we need to be listening more.
Yes. And that's what I was saying to the two gentlemen. No matter what I said, they had an answer. I remember initially, like I said, Pastor Judah talked about All Lives Matter. And then one of them said, I'm really disappointed in you. He talked about Black Lives Matter. And the gentleman in response was saying, I'm disappointed in you. All lives matter. All lives matter to God. And you don't get it. And you're turning and you're changing, etc. And he said the truth is justice was done. Now, this is before today. This is like 2 days ago. So only Mr. Chauvin was arrested and charged, but not the other three. And he said, justice was done. He said, and then he started saying, you know, Black people are looting, Black people are rioting. I don't understand, you know, what the issue is. And I would hear you more if you would stop, you know, looting and rioting. As a direct response of that, I said, okay, what I'm going to do is just tag you on a bunch of videos. I don't even need to, I don't need to defend myself. I just want to show you the inaccuracies in your theory. I tagged him 3 different videos of cops breaking out windows. I tagged him 3 different videos of white people looting, surfboards, Mercedes, a white woman walking with a cheesecake. What does that have to do with it? I furthermore showed him 10 different videos of blocks. There were blocks that were showing up all over the place that were just magically there. There'd be 500 blocks, bricks for people to riot. I showed him videos of Black women telling white people who were either graffitiing BLM, had nothing to do with the movement, bashing out windows, had nothing to do with the movement, or handing Black people bricks. And the Black woman will come in and say, do not do that. We did not ask you to do that. This is a peaceful movement. We need you to get the heck out of here. So in other words, I'm showing him a completely different narrative based solely on the fact that he said, Black people are the ones rioting, looting, etc. You need to stop doing this. And I'm showing him, no. Peaceful protests. We're not for this. We're saying don't let the message go away. We are organizing, and where we are organizing, we are literally saying do not loot, do not riot. Right. In addition to that, I tagged him on a page that literally says the history of white riots. And I only did him on 10 posts. And all 10 posts, none of them had to do with a human losing their life and people asking for justice. It was all rioting based on haircuts, based on your team won, your team lost, a concert, all of these different things that had nothing to do with social justice, nothing to do with anything that had to do with the goodness of humanity. So I am showing you, A, we're more the same than we are different. B, this has nothing to do with what the movement is about. And C, clearly this is not the point. You know what he said to me? You clearly hate white people.
Oh, wow.
Because you only tagged white people in your responses doing bad things. And I said exactly what you said. I was like, wow, I tagged white people because you said white people were not doing anything bad and Black people were. That's why I tagged white people. It had nothing to do with me hating white people. And if you're going to accuse me of hating white people because I show you, and this is the point, because I show you proof of an ideal that causes you to rethink your original premise, we can't have a conversation.
Right. And so you've done all you could to try and show him. And when someone else doesn't want to listen, you just got to leave it at that. What are you going to do?
That's it.
At that. And I want to talk to you all day because you're such a wealth of knowledge and you have all these great anecdotes. And unfortunately, we're running out of time.
No worries.
We're running out of time because our show gets cut off. But I do want you to leave us with one bit of advice that you want the world to hear right now about how we can be really cultivating our relationships during crisis.
I really think there's a lot of different things. I think, first of all, particularly considering the fact that, you know, we just got the convictions, I think everybody should take a break. I know I'm on social media, but I really do think everyone should take a break. I think there's a collective sigh that needs to happen. I think we need to take care of our mental, spiritual, and emotional health. And we need to realize that as a nation, we've just gone through something incredibly emotional and exhausting. So that's the first thing I would say. Take some time, take a walk, be tranquil, love a family member, you know, get your hugs, get your loves. You can have conversations as well. But again, remember everything we talked about. Be open, be willing to hear, be willing to hear the perspective of another person. And I think for whites trying to talk to Blacks, or for whites, I'm sorry, because I'm trying to remember exactly what the question was so I can answer it properly. So I'm not answering a different question. Can you ask the question again?
No, you said it. The question was what you want to leave us with in cultivating our relationships right now. And I think understanding the idea that there are two different Americas and that our experiences are different than your experiences, and just coming from that place, but also being willing to listen to the person who is in front of you
Forget whoever your news sources are. Forget whatever your history book said. Just forget it. And just for a moment, listen to the person who's in front of you, because every human being just wants to be heard. And if you can acknowledge their experience without taking it personal and assuming that they are angry with you, or that they are mad at you, or that they are resentful toward you, then you can be open to just hearing. And hearing is it's just the first step. That's what I would say. I would say, be willing to listen. Be willing to listen.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't follow the Black marriage movement, do it. Your wealth of knowledge. You come from such a place of wisdom. I appreciate you taking the time to join us at Moms Matter. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you right here at EverTalk TV.